Joining us now is Liberal MP Tim Wilson. Tim Wilson, thanks so much for your time. Now, the government is saying that there's no change of policy in terms of border protection, that there's no specific deal in relation to this Medivac repeal. But separate to that, it looks very clear that Jackie Lambie's got some sort of indication that the New Zealand option will be pursued. Would you welcome that?
Well, firstly, I think you're speculating, and what I welcome is the repeal of the law which did nothing to increase the health services to people who need assistance and support on Manus and Nauru, but has made sure that we've secured our borders once again. Now, there's always been the objective of this government to resettle the people who have been refugees on Manus and Nauru, to do it as quickly as possible, to work with other countries for third-party resettlement and establish a clear legal pathway for refugees to come to Australia within our quota. So I would always welcome an opportunity.
But you say speculating, and that's true, but what's not speculating is the fact that Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, this morning said the offer remains, and she's got, while it's not her preferred option that people be restricted to come to Australia if they are resettled there, that's a matter for this government, not hers. So clearly there's a way forward there. Should your government be now pushing ahead with it?
And that, of course, we have worked with other countries at every point, the United States, to resettle people, and we'll continue to do so. But there have been conditions we've put on people going to New Zealand in the past, and so these are the sorts of things that we're dealt with.
Would you like to see the government push ahead with it?
What I want to see is refugees resettled so that we can move on having legal pathways for refugees to come to Australia. What I don't support is backdoor pathways to Australia under the banner of thinking it's humanitarian or better for people when it does nothing except undermine border security.
It's not really speculation either to say that a deal has been done. We had Jackie Lambie on the record saying she wanted a condition met before she agreed to support the legislation. She supported the legislation. She said she's been satisfied. Something must have been offered to her to get her over the line.
Well, sorry, that is speculation. I mean, the reality is she may need some form of clarification. And of course, we work with the crossbenchers all the time to get legislation passed through the Parliament. The facts remain that this bill, the Medivac bill, did nothing to increase the health services to refugees. It did undermine border security, and that's the basis that I would hope that she voted for it.
Well, she also voted on the basis of what Annaliese said there, though, in her speech yesterday. We watched it as it went to, she gave it in the Senate. She was emotional when she got to the point about talking about this proposal that she's been working with the government to an outcome on. They were her words. That she's been working with the government to an outcome on, so that's beyond speculation. That sounds quite concrete to me, that there's been something that she's been briefed on that has meant that she's come across to vote for this other law.
Well, there are always information that's provided to parliamentarians which isn't necessarily in the public domain, particularly around matters of border security and national security. And I think this is one of the differences between how some people see these issues simply through their heart and having to look at the practical reality of thinking through with their head. And it's clear that Ms Lambie has chosen to think with her head, to understand the practical consequences of the repeal of this legislation that did increase access to health services, but by doing so have secured the borders. And actually, when we have more border security, and this has been the story of this government, unlike the previous government who put kids in detention centres, onshore and offshore, we've been able to get them out. When you re-establish clear border security, you actually have more options at your disposal to resettle refugees and deliver a better outcome for everybody.
Now, when it comes to the national account figures, there were some interesting numbers in there. We've heard the government say that we're on our way back in the black, but there are some slow growth figures in there as well.
Well, we're facing challenging economic times around the world, but Australia's economy has continued to grow. That's what we've needed to do to make sure that we can keep the budget back in the black and to deliver on the budget commitments we've made this time in the last budget. And these issues are going to be confronted, obviously, in my EFO shortly, but also as we get towards next year's budget. But the critical thing is that the economy is still growing, and that's what we need to make sure that Australians can afford to pay their bills, people keep their jobs, pay their mortgages and be able to get on with their lives while the government takes responsibility for the national accounts.
And what about the big question in terms of how we can boost that growth, productivity? What do you see as the key there?
I see lots of areas of reform are important. We need to continue the discussion around tax reform. The Treasurer and the Prime Minister set up in the last budget a progression towards flattening the tax base. I think that work needs to continue. There's issues we need to confront in terms of skills and increasing workforce participation. That's part of what has been outlined today in the Prime Minister's announcement.
Is it all about the consumption tax, do you think? Is it about lifting that?
There are lots of taxes that I think we need to review, but it's also about state taxes. That's what the states have been going on about. There is a big challenge that confronts everybody around tax reform, but increasing the skills and participation is critical. The Prime Minister just announced a consolidation of departments to focus precisely on that. So we're addressing the challenges that are facing the country today to boost productivity and growth, but it's never going to be solved overnight.
Just on that announcement by the Prime Minister, the cynical among us would say if you're going to amalgamate these departments, surely the objective is to streamline, and that means layoffs.
Well, no, I don't think that is the objective. It's actually about getting the focus of the public service to deliver the program that the government took to an election endorsed by the Australian people. That's the focus. Consolidation where we can achieve it between some of the departments to streamline that process, to get it more clearly working towards the government's program. But the Prime Minister's been very clear, there's no job layoffs. There obviously have been some secretaries whose contracts won't be renewed with the merging of some departments, and that's where the government's focus is.
Tim Wilson, thanks so much for your time. We've got some